If you've been feeling the silence getting heavier, this isn't random and it isn't over. Something deeper is unfolding behind the distance, and the truth of it is about to change everything you thought you understood. Welcome to Inner Shadow, where we dive into the hidden emotions and silent transformations within human connection. Today, we explore what their silence really means and the deeper inner shift that's quietly bringing everything toward a final truth. If this message has reached you right now, it's not just random timing. Something within you was already searching for clarity, and that quiet pull led you here. This isn't about coincidence. It's about awareness finding its way back to you. The person on your mind, the one whose silence feels heavy and incomplete, is the reason this moment feels so personal. What you've been feeling isn't confusion without meaning. It's your inner awareness trying to show you that there's more beneath the surface than what you've been telling yourself. The story you've been repeating, the one where you question your worth or assume they've simply moved on, is only a small piece of a much larger reality. And that understanding is beginning to shift. Their silence isn't empty. It isn't a lack of feeling. In many ways, it's the opposite. It's what happens when emotions become too intense to express clearly. When something is felt deeply but not fully understood, it doesn't always come out as communication. It often shows up as withdrawal. Not because there's nothing there, but because there's too much. You may have seen their distance as rejection, but it often comes from being overwhelmed. When emotions arrive with a depth someone isn't prepared for, their instinct is to step back, not forward. It's not about your value, it's about their capacity to handle what they're feeling. There's an idea that what we avoid doesn't disappear. It simply takes another form until we're ready to face it. That's what's happening here. They haven't escaped what they felt with you. They're still within it, trying to make sense of something that challenged them on a deeper level than they expected. Part of them recognized something real in your connection, something that felt familiar, grounding, almost like a sense of belonging. But another part became afraid of what that depth required. Real emotional connection asks for openness, honesty, and vulnerability, and not everyone is ready for that when it arrives. So instead of facing it directly, they stepped back. Not because it meant nothing, but because it meant more than they knew how to handle. Silence became their way of coping, a space where they could hold those feelings without fully confronting them. But silence doesn't erase emotion, it holds it. Beneath the surface, something continues to process. Moments you don't see still exist. Times when their thoughts return to you unexpectedly. When memories surface without warning. When they feel something they can't easily explain. On the outside, everything may look normal. Life continues, routines stay in place. But internally, there's still a connection that hasn't fully settled. Not because they're holding on to the past intentionally, but because something meaningful was left unresolved. What you shared didn't just pass through them, it left an impression. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. It touched something deeper than surface-level interaction, and that kind of impact doesn't fade quickly. There's also something important to understand about emotional reflection. Sometimes when we connect deeply with someone, we don't just see them, we see parts of ourselves more clearly. That can be uncomfortable, especially if those parts were hidden or avoided. And when that happens, distance can feel like the only way to regain balance. But even distance doesn't fully remove what was felt. It only creates space for it to be processed differently. And in that space, awareness slowly builds. Not all at once, not in a clear or immediate way, but gradually. This is why thoughts of you still return to them. Not as a habit, but as something tied to meaning. When an experience carries emotional depth, the mind revisits it, not to relive it, but to understand it. What remains between you isn't just memory, it's something unfinished on an emotional level. Not in a dramatic sense, but in a way that hasn't been fully expressed or understood yet. And that's why it still feels present even in silence. At the same time, this experience hasn't only affected them, it's changed you as well. You've become more aware, more reflective, more in tune with what you feel and what matters to you. That's part of the impact too. What's unfolding now isn't something that can be rushed. It's a gradual process, one that happens internally before anything becomes visible on the outside. There are realizations forming, questions being asked, and emotions slowly being understood. The outcome isn't immediate, and it isn't something that can be forced. But what is certain is that something real was experienced, and that kind of experience always leaves a lasting effect. For now, the most important thing is to stay grounded in your own clarity. Let things unfold without trying to control them. Because whatever comes next will come from a place of truth, and truth doesn't rush, but it does reveal itself in time. Everything unfolding right now is happening in its own time. Growth like this is never instant. It moves quietly beneath the surface, long before anything becomes visible. Silence in this sense is not empty at all. It's often where the deepest realizations begin to take shape, even if nothing outward has changed yet. But a true reunion can't happen until both people are ready to meet it fully. Until both have grown enough to hold what once felt overwhelming, they remain in a phase of transformation. Right now, they are still within that process, like something developing out of sight. You may not see the result yet, but change is already happening. Just because it isn't visible doesn't mean it isn't real. Life often communicates in ways that go beyond logic. Not through direct explanations, but through patterns, timing, and subtle moments that seem to carry meaning. You may have noticed certain signs, small, repeating experiences that feel too aligned to ignore. Numbers appearing again and again, songs that reach you at exactly the right moment, dreams that feel vivid and emotionally real. These moments don't always make sense logically, but they leave an impression. Even the sudden emotional waves you feel, the warmth, the pull, the quiet sense of knowing, these are part of how deeper connections are experienced when words are no longer present. The mind may question it, but the feeling itself is undeniable. Sometimes what you feel holds more truth than what you can explain. As these moments become more noticeable, it can feel like something is shifting beneath everything, as if life is quietly guiding you toward awareness before anything changes externally. Inner movement always comes first. External change follows later. What feels like delay is often just development still in progress. And if contact ever returns, it likely won't arrive in a perfectly timed or expected way. It may come when you're no longer constantly looking for it, when your focus has shifted back to your own life. It might begin as something simple, but quickly carry a depth that reflects everything left unspoken. That moment, if it happens, won't feel rehearsed or controlled. It may feel raw, uncertain, even imperfect. Words might not come out clearly. Emotions may show themselves in ways that aren't polished. But within that, there can still be honesty, something real that wasn't expressed before. Reconnection, if it happens, is not just about returning to what was. It's about what has changed in both people. It's about whether growth has actually taken place and whether something new can be built from a different level of understanding. But beyond all of that, the most important part of this journey is you. Because your life cannot remain on hold waiting for someone else's timing. Your peace, your direction, your sense of self, these must belong to you, regardless of what they choose. There is strength in fully choosing yourself, not out of reaction, but out of awareness. When your happiness is no longer tied to their presence or absence, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling stuck. You start living again fully and freely. That's where your real power is, not in waiting, but in continuing forward. As you release emotional dependence, your energy naturally changes. You become more grounded, more whole within yourself. You no longer feel like something is missing. And from that place, everything becomes clearer. Ironically, this is often when things either return or fade away completely, not because you tried to control it, but because you are no longer attached in the same way. And even if nothing comes back, your life still moves forward. Your value was never defined by someone else's response. What truly matters is not just whether someone returns, but who you become through this process. This moment is not the end of your story. Silence doesn't erase meaning. It often creates space for it. Space for clarity, for growth, for understanding. So don't let your life pause here. Keep moving, keep growing, keep becoming, because what is truly meant for you will not be lost in silence, and neither should you. What makes this phase so powerful is that it forces both people into a kind of inner confrontation that everyday life usually allows them to avoid. When a connection carries real emotional depth, it doesn't just create feelings toward another person. It exposes patterns, fears, and unmet needs that were already there, but hidden. That's why the experience can feel so intense and confusing at the same time. It's not only about them or you, it's about what the connection reveals underneath. Silence becomes the space where this revelation matures. Without constant interaction, there is nothing to distract from what is being felt internally. The mind starts replaying moments, not just to remember them, but to understand them. People often revisit specific conversations, small details, emotional reactions, trying to piece together why it felt different, why it stayed, why it didn't fade like other experiences. This is how meaning deepens over time rather than disappears. At the same time, the ego tries to regain control. It creates explanations that feel safer, telling them it was temporary, exaggerated, or not as important as it seemed. But deeper emotional experiences don't fully obey those explanations. They continue to surface in subtle ways. A memory triggered by something ordinary, a feeling that appears without context, a comparison that happens without intention. These are not deliberate choices. They are signs that something unresolved still exists internally. There is also a psychological tension between familiarity and growth. What you represented to them may have felt emotionally true, but also unfamiliar in its depth. An unfamiliar depth can feel threatening, even when it's positive. People tend to return to what they understand, even if it's less fulfilling, simply because it feels safer. That's why part of them may resist moving toward you, not because they don't feel anything, but because it requires stepping into a version of themselves they haven't fully accepted yet. This is where time plays a complex role. Time doesn't automatically erase meaningful experiences. It either buries them or brings them into clearer focus depending on how a person processes them. If they continue avoiding what they feel, the connection remains unresolved and returns in cycles. If they begin to reflect honestly, the meaning becomes clearer and leads toward a decision. Either way, time is not empty. It is active, shaping perception and emotional understanding. Another important aspect is emotional capacity. Feeling something deeply and being able to sustain it are not the same thing. Many people experience powerful emotions but lack the stability, communication skills, or self-awareness to hold them consistently. That gap between feeling and capacity is often where distance is created. It's not a lack of care, it's a lack of readiness. And readiness cannot be forced externally. It develops internally through experience and reflection. From your side, this phase can feel like uncertainty, but it also holds an opportunity for clarity. When you are no longer receiving consistent feedback from them, your attention naturally turns inward. You begin to ask different questions, not just about them, but about yourself. What do you actually need? What kind of connection feels stable and real? What are you willing to accept, and what are you no longer willing to compromise? These questions are not always comfortable, but they are necessary for growth. There is also a shift that happens when you stop trying to interpret every sign or silence as a direct message about your worth. Their internal process is about them, not a measure of you. When you detach your self-value from their behavior, you regain emotional balance. You stop reacting to every change in their energy and start observing it with more clarity. This creates space for you to respond from a grounded place rather than from anxiety or longing. As this continues, something subtle but important changes in your presence. You become less focused on outcome and more anchored in your own experience. This doesn't mean you stop caring, it means your care is no longer tied to uncertainty. You begin to move forward without needing constant resolution. And that shift often changes the dynamic, whether or not the other person is aware of it. If they are also growing during this time, there may come a point where their internal understanding aligns with action. That's when communication becomes possible again, not from confusion, but from clarity. But if that alignment doesn't happen, the distance remains, not because something was meaningless, but because it didn't reach a point of mutual readiness. What's important is recognizing that both outcomes carry truth. Either the connection evolves into something more stable, or it remains as an experience that shaped both of you but didn't continue. Neither outcome invalidates what was felt. The meaning of the connection is not defined only by whether it continues, but by the impact it created. In the end, this kind of experience changes how you see connection itself. It raises your awareness of emotional depth, of timing, of readiness, and of your own boundaries. It teaches you that not everything meaningful is meant to last in the same form, but everything meaningful leaves something behind that contributes to who you become. And that is where the real shift happens. Not in waiting for a specific outcome, but in understanding that your growth is not dependent on it. In the end, this journey was never only about them. It was about what this connection revealed within both of you. It brought hidden emotions to the surface, challenged old patterns, and forced a deeper level of awareness that could no longer be ignored. What you shared was real, and its impact didn't disappear in silence. It transformed. Their distance was not the full story, just one part of a much deeper internal process. And now everything is moving toward clarity. Whether that clarity leads them back to you or further away, it will come from truth, not confusion. But the most important realization is this: your life cannot remain paused while someone else finds their answers. Your growth, your peace, and your sense of self must continue, independent of their timing. When you choose yourself fully, you step out of waiting and into living. If they return, it will be from a place of readiness and honesty. If they don't, it will not take away from what was real. It will simply mean the path was not aligned at this time. Either way, you are not losing. You are evolving. Because in the end, this story is not defined by who comes back. It is defined by who you become. Before you go, if this message truly spoke to you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what Inner Shadows reveals next. And if you felt this on a deeper level, comment the word aligned below.